will you please join me in welcoming our mayor of Grand Rapids, Mayor David LaGrand, to the stage.
Wow, standing ovation before I even say anything. I should leave. Thank you all for coming. I'm so glad that we're here together. And we're here to talk about our city. So let's notice before important conversations that are actually happening in a convening like this. Before I forget, of course, thank you to everybody who facilitated this, for the people who helped me get this ready, for the people working sound and all the logistics, for the people who fed us all the food so that we could all just show up and have fun. And I also, of course, want to thank the sponsors who made tonight possible. As most of you know, this event has a decades-long tradition, and part of that tradition is sponsors pay for the cost, the venue and all that, so we don't use taxpayer dollars for what's very much a civic event. So the sponsors are up on the screen. Thank you all for hosting us. I also want to thank the many civic leaders and elected officials who are in the room, and I'm not going to do it by name because then I'm going to forget someone and then I'll have to apologize afterwards. If I were to acknowledge all the visionary thinking that was in this room and all the talent in this room, we'd be here a lot longer than anybody wants. But I do want to thank collectively the people who really make our city work. We're here to talk tonight about visions and hopes and values, but the vocational commitment of the over 2,600 people who work for our city are what really make our dreams a reality. In particular, particularly, I want to thank our city manager, Mark Washington, our city attorney, Anita Hitchcock, our clerk, Joel Hondorp, and our treasurer, John Clemency. So thank you all. This is your city. I also want to lift up my colleagues. Our city should be justly proud that Commissioners Perdue and Kilgore, Isasi and Knight, Robbins and Belcheck serve us all. They work every day to make our government better, to make Grand Rapids government, to make sure that our government really listens and is responsive to our citizens. They deserve our thanks. So, what should Grand Rapids policy and vision look like? I've been suggesting 3 baskets for policy challenges that deserve our particular attention: the areas of housing, justice and policing, and city and neighborhood design. But how we work on these projects is as important as the projects themselves. A strong commitment to practicing and reinforcing community is vitally important right now. The good news, the really good news, is that people want to live in our city. The word's out. You can find community here, you can live a rewarding life, you can enjoy your life while you live it. Of course, there are things, solid, sensible, connected things we can improve in Grand Rapids. In fact, if one thing characterizes this moment, it's simply the need to accelerate and scale up the work that's already begun, so that our work forward is the right size for the needs at hand. Let's look at the state of housing. We all know Grand Rapids is no longer a cheap housing market, and that makes sense. Housing is cheap, places people don't want to live, and more expensive where there's demand. Studies show that Grand Rapids will need roughly 12,400 more units of housing in the next 2 years to meet growing demand. In other words, that's how fast we'll have to run to stay in place. Unfortunately, the place we're in is behind. In the past decade in Grand Rapids, income's risen 54%, but housing costs have increased 124%. It's clear that we need housing as fast as possible at every price point. All housing supply helps housing stay affordable. Studies consistently show that new higher-end housing opens choices for everyone as people move around inside the community. Of course, housing costs also directly relate to costs of construction, which has real connections to how restrictive we are about building requirements. And while we need housing at every price point, some housing requires more attention and more support. That's one of the reasons why when we think about housing, most of us naturally think about the unhoused first. And nationally, the picture's not good. In the last year, the unhoused population of the US increased by 18%. That's in 1 year, at a time when the problem was known and an area of focus nationally. But I can tell you that in Grand Rapids, we are meeting this challenge and making exciting progress on helping the unhoused. Spearheaded by nonprofit leaders and supported by staffing at the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce, the 100 and 100 initiative has done amazing work, specifically focused on the highest needs individuals who are unhoused with other challenges, such as mental health challenges or substance abuse issues. And so far, 73 of those individuals have been housed, and an additional 72 have been referred to a permanent housing resource. And some of you may not know this, but it's actually a definable and not a huge number of people we're talking about. The number of that group is in the hundreds, it's not in the thousands. And the slogan is catchy, 100 and 100, but the vision behind this work is to build up permanent protocols to help drive that population number to near zero and keep that number there. So, many have been involved in this work, but I want to lift up Thelma Ensink from Degage and Josh Longer from the Chamber in particular. Their enthusiasm for this work is contagious. Their laser focus on outcomes and their practical get-it-done work ethic has made a real leap forward in this work in Grand Rapids. So thank you to both of them. And to all the others, many hands make light work. They're not the only two people involved here, folks, but I wanted to highlight their leadership because they've really, really been champions. We've also seen substantial commitments to larger housing projects in Grand Rapids. The Three Towers project to the old Charlie's Crab site, the conversion of the Fifth Third building on Lion Street to housing are layered on top of planned housing over the Factory Yards development, and it's, I hope, going to be followed by housing projects in the North Monroe area and housing triggered by the creation of our new soccer stadium near Mount Vernon and Pearl. But as exciting as these big projects are, they don't sum up to our city's demand for housing. And they don't fill important parts of our housing needs. The need for smaller, small investor, neighborhood embedded, affordable options that fill gaps in our neighborhoods, make space for new neighbors, add vibrancy block by block around our city, helping to support neighborhood businesses and the shared community resources that make all of our neighborhoods fun and really different places to live. That's why I'm excited to talk to you tonight and tell you about two new initiatives. The first is the Grand Rapids Land Bank. I wrote and introduced legislation enabling cities to create land banks in the 101st legislature, and it became law after Representative Christian Grant reintroduced the bill in the 102nd legislature. Last October, yeah, it's great. Last October, Grand Rapids became the first city outside of Detroit to authorize a land bank, and the work's about to begin. At its simplest level, a land bank is an efficient tool to receive foreclosed properties, clear title issues, and get the property back into use in the community. But a land bank can do much more. Properly led, properly funded, and staffed, a land bank can actively spur new housing work. As a nonprofit, a land bank can unlock housing, receiving land like surface parking lots from churches and other faith and civic communities for housing. A land bank can receive unbuildable lots and work to get those lots pre-approved for building. And it can actively seek out deals on the empty lots we see all over town, on virtually every street, to allow new units to fill our community's needs. So I'm excited by that prospect. Remember, the assessment is we need 12,400 new units by 2027. That's about 12 units a day for the next 1,000 days. Last year, we built about one a day. Building is happening, but the scale of the supply is not meeting the scale of the need. So the need to meet that scale is the reason why I'm excited to share the second new initiative, addressing the need for smaller scale, decentralized local housing supply. I'm working with our city manager and community members to assemble an accessory dwelling unit task force to spur creation of more ADUs. Now, accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, have lots of promise and characteristics when you think about it for addressing present housing problems. Think of an ADU in its simplest form as a garage that you might convert into a one-bedroom or studio apartment. A nice thing about garages is they already exist all over the city. They don't displace anything. They have 4 walls, they already have a roof, they have a floor, they're near utility hookups, and they're locally owned. BlackRock Capital isn't going to buy my garage anytime soon. Locally owned, of course, also means locally accountable. A tenant in my backyard is a tenant I know, it's a tenant I can keep track of. But for all the positive potential of accessory dwelling units, there's been a disconnect. Last year, Grand Rapids changed our building code to allow for more ADUs, and 8 were built. You heard that right, tens of thousands of possible new housing sites, and we got 8. Our task force will focus on making it easier for homeowners to build an ADU, working to make financing available, to look at incentives, work with our state partners, I hope, on that, to further code reform, to spread information, and to improve approval pathways. We can and we should pave a path for hundreds of these units, allowing new houses for our neighbors, new income for homeowners across our city, not just downtown. The second basket we need to pay attention to is justice and policing. Public order is the bedrock of a strong city. Cities will always have to recommit to balancing between citizens' competing desires for liberty and order, for free action and safety. Providing public order happens in all kinds of ways, including but not at all limited to policing. The stronger and more interconnected our community is, the more our need for order is going to be filled by collaborative, peacekeeping responses to conflicts. But we will always need traditional policing for the times when other means of keeping the peace just aren't enough. In Grand Rapids, we've been making real progress on non-police-centered public order work. The community work by Cure Violence is expanding across all 3 wards in the city with the goal of stopping violent acts spreading. Their teams are digging in, finding conflicts before they erupt in violence, mediating and engaging. Our 911 system is differentiating calls that need a mental health team response from those that need a police-only response. This past year, Grand Rapids welcomed a new 16-bed crisis stabilization unit over at Trinity Health on Jefferson Avenue, where our first responders can now bring people to stabilize from a mental health crisis as an alternative to simply bringing them to jail, and where people can self-refer if they're having a crisis. That unit has already helped 1,300 people with acute mental health needs. Now, all this work is in progress, but it all has room to grow. More good news is that our core first response teams in Grand Rapids, our police and fire departments, are strong. Chiefs Winstrom and Brown have the strongest, most positive rapport. Yeah. Our chiefs have the strongest and the most positive rapport with our firefighters and our police officers than I've ever seen. Now, nothing is more important than morale, that tricky mix of pride, supportive leadership, and community respect that keeps our first responders giving their best on the hard jobs we ask them to do. Chiefs Winstrom and Brown lead by example, and they both have that magical ability. I'm looking at you, Chief. They have that magical ability to connect, to show they care, and to do the tough work of leadership while they make it look easy. It's not easy, it's hard. We have truly excellent, well-trained first responders in our city, and I'm so proud of all of our public safety teams, and we owe them all our gratitude. Now, I'm not going to barrage you with too much detail, but the headline here to take away is crime is down in Grand Rapids, and our first responders are constantly working, not just to keep us safe, but to strengthen connections in the community. And we can see that results in our hiring. Since a low point of 261 officers in August of 2023, GRPD currently has 297 sworn officers, including the most recent class of hires, and they're on track for 310 officers by the summer. Our next increase in staffing will allow GRPD to re-emphasize community policing, something we've been waiting for a long time. Officers embedded in the neighborhoods where they can get to know people, block by block by block, which is critical to doing policing well and to being a peacekeeper in a community. So So happy to be looking forward to that. And our firefighters have a lot to be happy about because they've got new stuff. Our firefighters have also grown their staffing. They had over 800 applicants at their last hiring opening. And we have two new fire stations, one on Kalamazoo and the other one over on Division, being built as we speak. And, you know, in terms of new stuff, we also have we are finally seeing construction of our long-dreamed training facility over on Pinal on the west side. And that's really exciting. So the third topic, the third of those baskets, is what I call, for better or for worse, neighborhood flourishing. And this is a topic that's near and dear to all of us. If you already have a home, if you don't interact much with the policing system, those may not be your top issues. But if you live in Grand Rapids, you live in a neighborhood. Neighborhoods are where we belong. It's where our kids go to school, where we find joy, where we're really grounded day to day. In lots of ways, we're moving forward in Grand Rapids with a vision that every neighborhood should fill most of our weekly wants and needs close to us. That vision encompasses safe, walkable, and bikeable streets, healthy public infrastructure, healthy public transportation, thriving schools, solid business districts, parks to connect in, and third spaces to get together with each other and share experiences. Our city schools are in good hands. Outcomes are improving in GRPS across the board. I don't know if any of you were at the State of the Schools, but lots of exciting news from our school system right now. And our school board is actively working with city leadership to imagine how some school properties could be repurposed for housing and community centers and park space to keep serving the neighborhoods where they're planted. We're making real progress on helping neighborhood businesses with strong corridor and business improvement districts. We've made progress on people-centered streets, on first and last mile transportation tools like bikes and scooters, but there's a lot more to do. We can and should commit to equalizing support for our neighborhood business districts to lift up all our neighborhoods together. We can and should insist that the value of our parks is measured by use, not size. Next time you pass a park, ask yourself how much of it's being used, how much of its space has people on it just having fun. For example, did you know that we still only have 2 dog parks in our park system? Not even 1 award. Now that maybe is a small thing unless you own a dog, or 3 like I do. But dog parks do great things. I know because I go to them. They make introductions, they make connections. If your dog messes with somebody else's dog, you gotta go talk to the owner, right? Dogs are ambassadors, one interaction at a time, and they bring people together, they really do. Walking to a dog park puts owners' eyes on the streets, it puts their eyes in the park, and that's great for public safety. So that's something I'm excited about improving. We also have precious few flasher-equipped pedestrian crossings in town. We need to just lift that up in an order of magnitude. Hardly any streets in this town, if we're honest about it, feel truly safe for biking at this point. And too many streets are just designed so that it's too easy to go too fast. We can make our roads better for driving and walking and pedaling. And we can design them for the young and the old, not just the fit and the fast. Those are shared goals I hear from people all across our city and in our city planning staff. But here again, our scale needs to fit our vision. The sooner we can make our streets safer, the sooner our city streets will feel like assets and not obstacles. But at this moment in our history, we also have to look without flinching at the really big picture. In the last decade or so, it's become clear that we're living in a time when democracy's premises are strained. In politics, polarization has placed many Americans into 2 camps that self-righteously dismiss each other without engagement. Distrust of institutions, particularly of government, lets people feel justified in checking out from working on common goals. At the same time, people across our country are lonelier and less involved in real human interaction in all generations. Now, those 2 problems are, of course, connected, and you don't have to be an expert social critic to wonder if democracy won't survive, particularly if things get much worse. You know what I think our best hope is? you're standing in it, or you're sitting in it. Let's think for a minute, not about the state of our city. Let's think about the success of the city as a thing. The advantages that cities have in their very nature, and particularly here in Grand Rapids. We don't always remember this as we go about our daily lives, but here's a simple truth. Since humans invented cities a few thousand years ago, they've been thriving. Every year, more people live in cities, whether it's in India or Canada or the US, everywhere. That's because cities are the turbocharged, brilliant engines of vibrant community, education, economic growth. Tomorrow always begins with ideas sparked in cities. They're like nothing else and nowhere else. Cities are people together. Are you worried about polarization? In a healthy city, we all rub shoulders with very different people. And so we learn from each other and we learn how to respect each other. You're worried about loneliness? It's really hard to make friends in an empty field. In a city, you can join a block club or you can go to a dog park. Trust me, you'll make friends. Are you worried about disengagement? The very word politics means dealing with each other in a city. Democracy means dealing with people. Cities are where those things have to keep happening because it's where the people are. Look around Grand Rapids and the signs of hope are all around. We love to reference public-private partnerships in the city, and they're great. You know what I really love? Partisan, party-blind partnerships. We're in the town of Jerry Ford, no one's idea of an axe-grinding partisan. He and Jimmy Carter were lifelong pals, for Pete's sake. Paul Henry, Vern Ehlers, Rosalind Bliss. Sensing a theme here? Those leaders are all known for unifying, not dividing. The people of Grand Rapids elected me as a nonpartisan mayor. That means something. It means my charge as mayor is to be a voice for what we need right now desperately in this country and what Grand Rapids is. A community of engaged people committed to caring for each other, working with each other, respecting each other, making room for each other. We're a national model of that spirit, and we should never, for a moment, forget it. Now, can we do better tomorrow? Of course, in many reinforcing ways. In cities, in Grand Rapids, we have the framework to do better in ways that only cities can. So I'm going to close by telling you a story of doing better. Democracy means insisting that every voice matters. Not just the rich, not just the educated, not the noisy, every voice. If we don't, amen? Now, if we don't live that value, people will check out and they'll pull back into separate groups. They'll lose trust. Too often in democracy, we somehow still default to a process where decisions are made by the few and sold to the many. That's not democracy, that's marketing. I've decided in my time as mayor to flip the script and to try to have open policy discussions before we make decisions. We call those discussions Mayor's Mondays, and so far they've been a huge success. We do them in each ward, in turn, on Monday evenings, and before I forget, the details are always up on mayorsmondays.com, so I'm not going to tell you where and when, you go look on the website. But we talk about those big policy baskets that I listed in rotation. So we talk about housing the first month, next month we talk about policing, the third month we talk about neighborhoods, then we go back to housing, and so on and so on. The talk always begins with a reminder to be curious, open, and respectful. And people are showing up to own democracy in Grand Rapids. They're showing up with ideas. Last week, activists came to talk about a rails and trails dream to connect neighborhoods with bike paths alongside active rail lines. People are discussing things with respect and hope. They're making connections. Now, we'll know these meetings are really working when we can trace those ideas and discussions and see them leading into new policies and programs. We're not going to stop these convenings unless people stop showing up. Why would we? We're never going to be done wanting to spark improvements in housing, improvements in justice, improvements in neighborhood living. We'll never run out of voices because we're a city. So now, continue those conversations you started tonight, make connections, do the work that makes us Grand Rapids. Thanks, everybody.